Fighter now, though? Do you think has the same? Is it still popular, or do you think it's dying down?
I think it's probably dying down a bit, but that's just because Street Fighter 4 has been out for a few years. It's been through several iterations already.
But Third Strike's been out for a long time, and it's getting more and more popular. Because when Third Strike came out first, no one cared about it.
Well, it's helping because Online Edition came out recently.
Online Edition came out, but in '99 when it came out.
Oh yeah.
The game was dead. So it's like during I think '99 was Alpha 3.
It was Alpha 3.
Yeah.
So Alpha 3 had more people at the time. So Third Strike
it was more accessible.
Yeah, accessible. Yeah. Third Strike people had no clue. Like, oh, pairing, okay, whatever, and these new characters, I have no clue how to use them. Alpha 3 had a bunch of like old retro characters. So you're like, I know how to play this. I remember how to play.
Yeah.
Third Strike, you're like 12. Necro, I have no clue. They
don't even. Who the hell is Q?
Yeah, Q. Like they don't play anything like I remember. But
what happened to Chun-Li's thighs?
I think a big part of it is the spacing that came out of like from each game. Remember before that, like Street Fighter iteration came out like probably like once
every 6 months.
Almost like something like once
6 months.
Because it was an update basically.
Yeah. And when it came to around like that time, it was just like Alpha came out, and then another year Alpha 2, after like Alpha 3, like in between those was sort of Street Fighter, I believe. I think like year after Alpha 2 was the first one.
Yeah.
And then Alpha 3, and then Impact, and Third Strike. But the way that they all came out, they didn't get the time
to separate them.
Yeah. So like Alpha and like the Street Fighter 3 series don't have that sort of like iconic like grab to them because they're pretty much vying for attention.
It was tough. I mean, that's actually one of the major criticisms of the Street Fighter series during that time was that they were just oversaturating the market with which essentially for the casual gamer was the same game, just with different animations and all that. Yeah. It's like, why do I need 2 Street Fighters when I can just play this one? You know, but it was strange, and that's probably why we didn't see Street Fighter 4 for a really long time. We thought the series was dead after they had just drilled like Street Fighter 3 and Alpha into the ground.
Yeah, so that's one thing I was trying to go into is what don't you like about the Street Fighter franchise? Mm-hmm. From anything like gameplay to characters to even like scheduling or like marketing. Probably most people say they release too many hashes. They keep making the same. I guess like to a normal casual player, the same game over and over again. So because if you look at Championship Edition, like you get to play as 4 or the boss characters. Like
I get a blue kid.
Yeah, and then Street Fighter. It was a Turbo, or in Japanese, a Street Fighter 2 Dash, as it's called.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That one was biggest thing, and people say like, "Oh, Chun-Li can shoot a fireball." I'm like, "That's it." I'm like, "Well, there's other changes in the game. Mm-hmm. It's just
air hurricane kicks."
Yeah, but from a casual standpoint, that's all that was. That was the only thing that was like trying to get people to come. Because remember, the cover was Chun-Li throwing a fireball.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But then from people like who play the game, they're like, "No, there's like a ton more changes, right? A lot of changes. Like not just like for Chun-Li, but it's basically a giant overhaul of balancing." So
I don't think anybody really noticed back then the overhaul of balancing.
And part of it was also the visuals for it because they came out in like such a short time. Like a lot of them didn't look too different from the next.
Only one that looked different, I think, was Super Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, Street Fighter 2 was when it was like.
I think that was probably the first major overhaul in terms of the graphics.
It was still the same number though. It was like 2. So people are like, "Oh, so when are we going to go away from 2 to go to 3?" Instead of going to 3, they went to Alpha, which is basically Street Fighter 1.5.
Yeah. It was before the original Street Fighter in terms of story.
And then this is where they redrew all the sprites. So.
Yeah, because the animes was on a boom at that period.
Yeah, so they changed the anime.
They redrew it to the anime style. It was great.
Well, that's probably the thing I don't like is like they mass produce a ton instead of letting it sit and I guess like build up like I guess like a little like fan base.
Yeah,
and like at least hype up the thing, but instead they released it I'm like I think it was like Street Fighter Championship Edition, Street Fighter 2 and Championship Edition. Yeah. It was only like a 6-month difference. That's it. Mm-hmm. So
because I guess people wanted to play as the bosses.
That's probably the biggest thing that they complain. Like, I want to play as the 4 bosses. I'm like, okay.
Play as Vega,
yeah, Vega and Sagat and Balrog. It's like,
Or whichever one they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Do you have any other, like, besides, like, the mass production or the mass, like...
I think for me, it'd be kind of some of the decisions they've been making lately. I mean, besides the mass production thing, as far as game mechanics goes, they've been getting an insistence on having comeback mechanics. Like, I mean...
They did focus on comeback mechanics. I mean, the first one they ever focused on comeback mechanics was Marvel, right? Because, I mean, the other ones, they didn't have any comeback mechanics.
Street Fighter 4 came out, and then it had the Ultra.
Yeah, the Ultra was
Ultra
based
system.
on...
Ultra system
comeback
was a
system,
comeback system. And
but I didn't see it as, like, a big comeback system.
it wasn't really as that major, but then you had Marvel vs.
it's not Marvel
Capcom
3,
3
I'm like, okay,
came
that
out.
is a
They had
giant
X
comeback
Factor, and I was like, really? You guys are actually doing this?
That is a giant comeback mechanic. I'm like, okay, that can change the entire game from, like... From if you're losing completely to completely overhauling the opponent. So.
Yeah, and then you had Street Fighter Cross Tekken coming out with Pandora, and I was like, really, guys?
Nobody really... It's funny because you guys know that the 2013 patch is going to come out in the next 2 months or so.
There's
which
no
I'm
change
looking
to
forward to.
Pandora. The only thing they changed is the timer.
It's longer.
It's longer,
I think it's about
no
3 seconds longer.
But there's
3
no,
seconds.
but there's no
Oh,
damage
man.
increase on it. So it's just basically...
Exactly.
People still don't have... They don't have a concrete way of doing damage in that Pandora mode. So because people actually say they don't mind Pandora if it can be used.
Yeah.
Since it can't be used and no one uses it, it's basically worthless. So people are like, okay, just take it out. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
But since it's part of the storyline, they can't just like toss it.
The storyline is just ass backwards anyway.
Yeah,
so.
but still, it's part of the storyline.
It's a crossover. Crossover stories never work out that well.
Oh, goodness.
But I think that's kind of the main criticism I have is just they're trying to casualize the games to reach a larger audience, but there's a certain point that you can reach where there's such a thing as over casualizing things. It's like the X Factor is a good spot because
anybody can pick up and play that game.
Anyone
It doesn't require.
Well,
that
it
skill.
doesn't. It's anyone can pick up and play, but they're intentionally introduce these mechanics that give weak players an edge in match. It's like the Ultra system was designed so that a player can come back from it, which is actually kind of funny because Samurai Showdown had a rage mechanic like that.
Yeah. The POW system.
The POW system.
POW.
And I think it was better implemented in Samurai Showdown, mostly because that was the only meteor you had in the first place.
It was a rage meteor because that did devastating damage with the hard slash.
Yeah. So
this is the only button I used in that game.
Heavy slash.
But I think Ultra Meteor was... I mean, Ultras aren't as bad now as they were when they were originally done. Because back in Vanilla, only like a select couple characters could actually combo into Ultras and do like ridiculous damage.
Abel.
Crouching
Fierce. That was all you needed.
Yep. No, it's like Sagat too. Sagat had ridiculously high damage Ultra combo.
It wasn't his Ultra combo damage. It mostly his Tiger Uppercuts.
Yeah,
you
do Tiger Uppercut.
His Tiger Uppercuts were more lethal than other things, other arsenals they had. Like even Ultras, they're like, okay, this does damage, but his Tiger Uppercut, if you do two clean Tiger Uppercuts, I think I think it's counter hit Tiger Uppercut.
Yeah.
It does 25% damage to you.
Yeah.
So if it's counter hit, you're
like his
relying on Tiger Uppercut.
Yeah.
When they jump in, Tiger Uppercut.
And
so
the fact that
they're
you
like
could go
stronger
from
than
the
people's
Tiger
supers.
Uppercut into the Ultra.
Mm-hmm.
Or you get. I was like, no way.
Easy Ultra combos, and it's like Ryu was kind of the same way, but his
all you had to do was trade on a Dragon Punch.
Yep.
Or you had to knock them out of the air with a jab Dragon Punch, and as they floated down, you're like, hey, that's a free Ultra.
Yep.
That's why people abuse Sagat so much. He doesn't have to jump so much. All he has to do is just Tiger. He's not that hard of a character to play either, because I could just Tiger Shot and then Tiger Knee and then Tiger Uppercut. That's all he had is in his arsenal. Besides that, he has long range on his attacks.
His attacks
He has long range. He has fierce kick. He has
that feint kick too.
The feint is good. Feint's good, but remember his anti-air. He doesn't even have to Tiger Uppercut. You can just do the hard kick.
You just do hard kick.
Yeah, it's an anti-air too. So I'm like, wow,
he's so many roads to his Ultra. It's scary.
But I guess the point I'm getting is that they try to make these mechanics that are easier for beginner players and whatnot, but they end up backfiring and just end up being easily abused by the advanced players.
Oh yeah,
it's just you have to be able to find the middle point. Yeah, you can't. If you try to make it too easy, then the advanced players can just curb stomp them anyway.
Yeah, that's the Street Fighter Cross Tekken gems.
Yeah.
Where they're supposed to use for beginner players like auto guard and auto throw escape. But now they're like, oh yeah, well if beginners can take, there's nothing stopping the advanced players from taking advantage of it and
Exactly.
blowing up the online community with that game. So
my thing with the comeback mechanics that you've been mentioning and stuff like that with Marvel and with the Ultra system, I think a lot of it also has to do with how exciting the matches end up looking from a visual perspective.
The matches, if it's really one-sided, it's not fun to watch anymore.
Yeah,
because you see it like,
hey.
Yeah, so once you see like a Gen Agent,
you have to force yourself into the hype.
So once you see the Gen Agent, you're like, okay.
Yeah,
it's over.
And I think that's why, like the Evo moment, the Daigo parry. So
that was probably because that was basically a comeback mechanic. Like he basically he basically abused or took advantage of the system, of the game system, and made it a hype moment because there was no Ultra. He couldn't do it all.
Yeah,
he didn't have Ultra at the time. So
he couldn't weasel his way out.
He had to build a meter. He worked through that.
Worked through it. Yeah, so that was probably the biggest. If it's like if it was just like he's chip damage, like that's a normal.
I think he might have earned that meter while parrying.
He earned a meter while parrying, but just he parried all the way through because he had no meter and he had no life, so basically all I had to do was chip damage.
He had no choice.
Yeah.
So if it was a normal game, you're like, this game's over. Or it's over.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's gonna basically turn away, like whatever, it's done. But no, because that parrying moment, people were like, oh my god, these moments can still happen. These comebacks, like super comeback.
Absolutely,
moments.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, but like I said, they wanted to take advantage of that hype of the crowd moment, and that's why they built an Ultra system, so people can actually. The Ultra system was mostly meant to come back, but mostly meant to balance the game out. Yeah, because if you have the same health, then you do it, you both have the same health again.
Yeah.
It was never a point where like, you have more health than I do. Still, but like, it depends on how much meter you build, but it was meant to balance the game, balance the field again, like back to 0. So both of you have the same health. Super bars, just whatever, but yeah, you're on the same health. So that's you're somewhere. You're gonna get closer to winning.
But here's the other thing, though. If you got a beginner player playing against an advanced player anyway, even if he does get that ultra off and gets the health bars even, then the advanced player is more than likely going to still win.
There's always a question of skill.
It's always it's always skill there. But I mean, if it's like on same level of players, then there's always that balancing effect. Where like, okay, if I do an ultra, we're back on the same health, so that way anybody can take the game now, instead of like Street Fighter 3, which is like parry, and then once you get in the combo, you're like, well, he really has no chance of coming back unless he gets a lucky hit. That's about it.
But like,
comebacks in Street Fighter 3 required at least.
And I had more skill.
Yeah, definitely. Like you had to play that rock paper scissors game every time, and you had to force them into that position where they had to guess, and then from there, whether or not they guessed correctly, you just did ridiculous amounts of damage from there.
Yeah, I think like part of it for Street Fighter 4 was muscle memory, because like the biggest, like the best thing that they did and the worst thing that they did was simplified it back to like
Street
where
Fighter
it was not Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 4, where it's similar to playing Street Fighter 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because like I said, like I learned Street Fighter 4 entirely off of a super outdated championship video. That's super stereotypical.
Yeah, that's what they wanted to do, to make it feel more retro.
Yeah.
Back to the classic.
Yeah. Which, it brings in the casual group, but it doesn't really help out with like getting them to a point where they can take on like advanced players, because advanced players
they already know.
Played this game already. So it's like, I'm riding a bicycle. Like, there's like that much of a change from that.
There will always exist that, just that kind of coming into a fighting game thing where if you played previous fighting games, likely you've played Street Fighter 2 at some point, and you're going to have somewhat of an edge and all that. I mean, it's just for that person, it's a matter of
how much
just learning about the frames and what's safe, what's not safe. For the casual
it's
player,
not even like what's safe, what's frames. It's like, what's a safe move, what's not a safe move. That's about it. It's just
what looks like a frame trap, things like that. How many ways I can work a throw in.
Yeah. I think it's just something that Capcom needs to work on fine-tuning. Because there are other games that have come out that have had like some comeback mechanics that just aren't really that as game changing, but they can still give players a chance to make that comeback. It's like Soul Calibur 5 has a system where if a person is on the verge of losing, they get like instant.
Yeah, a lot of games now have comeback
Yeah.
mechanics. Like even Tekken has comeback mechanics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tekken has the rage meter, which I don't really particularly
Rage meter's
like.
pretty
yeah.
nuts, actually.
It
Rage
is
meter
pretty
does
nice.
insane amount of
We
damage.
just came from playing like 3 hours of
Yeah.
Tekken.
Yeah,
like
the damage difference when rage mode hits is just substantial.
It hurts.
But there's also Persona 4 Arena where they have the awakening state where you get low enough and you get
Yeah, you get the
150
comeback.
150.
The comeback, yeah,
Yeah.
they
You get more
they give you
meter.
more meter, and on top of that, you get more defense. So they give you a
Yeah.
comeback.
Yeah.
system.
Which-
So I think that's a bit of a better angle because it still gives it's not really the I win buttons, but it gives them courage. It lets them know that they're in trouble, but they still can make a comeback if they can work hard at it. But they just really need to work at it because of.
Yeah, because I think Street Fighter, again, being a pioneer, Street Fighter 4 did build the comeback system. Right?
Yeah.
And after that, every single game started implementing a comeback mechanic into the game. Like, the only thing I didn't see is BlazBlue didn't have a comeback mechanic.
No.
no.
KOF 13 didn't either.
13 also did not have a comeback mechanic. The ones I saw was like the 3D fighters or the Persona. Any game that was like for beginners, like casual players, I think it did have a comeback mechanic.
Yeah.
King of Fighters 13, I don't consider that a beginner game.
That-
that's
game
more-
is
It was
That's
not,
advanced.
I don't think that
No.
that was at all catered to casual
it's
players.
more for hardcore King of
It's
Fighters.
Definitely
definitely
the
for
main
advanced.
KOF fan base.
KOF fan base, yeah.
To make up for the travesty that was KOF 12.
It's not like 12 was a prototype. We agreed.
12
It was alpha.
me and Plumber,
It was
when we
alpha.
agreed on that was 12 was a prototype. Of
12 was the alpha.
12
Yeah.
didn't even have a boss. It was a time
It's a
attack
time attack.
with a really crappy custom combo system.
I
Dude, hard punch, hard punch, hard
Just match hard punch.
No, it's like
Finish with super.
A group all over.
like something that I feel that I guess that I shouldn't like about that game is the voice acting that came out of it. Because there's like this midpoint where they'd have an announcer who'd be like, "We are now here for the King of Fighters tournament, and the fighters are very excited."
Does it sound confusing? It's not like confused.
She sounded confused
And didn't know
like,
what to say.
Didn't know what
Like,
to say, and it's like she didn't speak English for the first time. She was reading off a teleprompter, but then she's still an actor that's pretending to be a reporter reading off a teleprompter.
who can't read
So it's like
very
this,
well.
these levels of
That's why
foreignness.
that's probably I just played that in Japanese.
Yeah.
On top of that, I
Yeah.
probably didn't care too much about it.
Okay.
And
But
that's
back
what.
to-
But back to Street
Back to
Fighter.
Yeah,
Back to
Street
Street
Fighter.
Fighter.
You'll never see us
Like,
complaining about the
another-
voice acting in Street Fighter
Yeah.
unless it's profound sadness.
Hey, I enjoy profound sadness.
You would.
But but I think the thing that I don't think it's Capcom's fault, but it's overall like a community thing. Is that people don't learn anything from playing the game. Like my standpoint is like after every match that you have, like anything, even if you're like just messing around or not, you should have something that you learned out of it. But it's come to a point now where people just press buttons, and it's not really about what the other person does. It's just, all right, I pressed these buttons, it didn't work. All right, I'm gonna press these buttons again.
I'll keep trying until it connects.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see like a lot of people say that about Marvel. Marvel
Yeah.
is all about who hits first.
It's definitely like that. In
Yeah, very much.
All right, so we are way past our time within. So we're gonna try to make this short. What do you think will happen to Street Fighter in the future? Do you think it will still be popular, or do you think it's just gonna fade away?
I think the only way Street Fighter will kind of fade away is if Capcom really screws up on something.
Or
And
even that, I don't think they'll.
They'll still have
They'll
a.
invest money to repair
Yeah.
Street Fighter because they're not gonna let Street Fighter die out.
Nah, they've already been doing that with Cross Tech, and they've been dedicated on trying to fix that. So even if they do, even if they do screw up, they will still have a very dedicated fan base.
Yeah.
So The only way for Street Fighter to die out is if Capcom physically pulls the plug on it themselves at this point. That's probably what's going to amount to, because the fan base is too big at this point for it to die out that easily.
Even then, like, somebody will try to pick it up.
Exactly.
I don't want Midway to pick up Street Fighter. They'd be like, Mortal Kombat Cross Street Fighter. I'm like, no, please don't do that.
NetherRealm Studios.
Like, it's Street Fighter the movie, the game.
Street Fighter
Oh,
over
God.
again.
No.
But I feel that the way Street Fighter is going right now, it's going through a cycle. Like, it's very reminiscent of how Street Fighter 2 was. So
Do you think it's gonna go back down, or is it gonna stay in the same level right now?
I think it's gonna stay at the same level until they have some sort of like big change again.
Street Fighter 5.
Like a Street Fighter.
Street Fighter 5, and then I'll just shoot back
Yeah.
up. Like,
Yeah.
really fast.
It had to be like how Alpha was a huge change, and how like Third Strike was a huge change.
So basically, give it time.
Yeah.
Because Street Fighter 4 was meant to be more of a throwback to Street Fighter 2 a bit, with the way it was presented.
Slow, bulky characters.
So if Street Fighter 5, they may end up doing something completely new with it. Or hell, they may even find a way to perfect 2D animation in a fighting game. We don't know at this point.
Yeah.
They probably won't go 2D animation.
Probably won't, but
2D is too expensive.
everyone's
3D is cheaper.
Yeah.
everyone's hoping for another 2D Street Fighter.
They want 2D Street Fighter, but money-wise,
Money-wise,
cheaper
yeah.
to produce a 3D model game.
Capcom likes saving on money.
Anyway, like think about it. Like Alpha was like the big thing, while like Third Strike was just like not anything.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
And then,
But then Alpha
that
died
died
out,
down,
and
and
then
then they're like,
Alpha-
let's
Third-
look for something else. And then, bam, Third Strike, and then Third Strike for a decade, pretty much.
Yeah.
That was the game of Street Fighter.
Well, that's because that's the only Street Fighter we had up to that date. I think,
But it was still like the fact that it was able to keep people around for a decade shows how
The
much,
replayability.
Yeah, replayability.
Marco, what do you think?
I
The
think-
future of Street Fighter.
I think when people start to grow complacent with all of the different iterations of it, because if you look at how Street Fighter 2 went and how many iterations of that game there was and all that, I think it's going to keep. I think it's also a very different time, so it's very hard to tell. Especially since we have downloadable, downloadable.
We have
content
access
now.
to DLC now.
Basically
Like,
different,
yeah.
different generation.
Yeah.
Updating the game through the internet and all that stuff, and it almost feels like a completely new game every time, and all that. I think when Capcom finally decides to go, maybe we should start working towards Street Fighter 5. I think it's still far away to me.
It's probably still a good ways
So you
off.
think it's not popular, it's not going to die down, it'll probably stay the same? Or do you think it's going to go down a little
I think it's starting to plateau at this point.
It is.
To be
It's
honest.
it's reaching its peak.
I think Street Fighter 4 has finally started to reach toward, like, if not at the end of their course or at the end of its lifespan, it's starting to get there.
Because even at
Because-
EVO, it's not as popular as compared to Marvel, Capcom.
Exactly, and people
Yeah.
are still asking. People are still asking for like changes to the game, especially when they find something like unblockables in it.
Yeah.
Like I think that was the recent issue, right?
Yeah, that's the
Is that I think almost every character has them. Is it?
I
Just around.
think a
saw
lot of characters, but they only tested with a few characters, like
Yeah.
Ryu and like that, and it's
It-
basically it's blockable. It's just it's like a parry. You
It's
have
a just
you have to
defense, yeah.
basically you have to parry on you have to like guard on the exact moment they're hitting you.
So how do these unblockables work exactly?
They try
Because
they
it's like
basically they throw you in a certain position and then they can just cross you up. Whatever the motion is, you can even try to cross guard or just go block normally, you'll still get hit.
so it's like a glitch or something.
Yeah,
Because I saw some videos on
it's a video.
the other.
It's a glitch,
Yeah.
but
I saw some videos and I was just
it's
I was
not a
looking at
game-breaking
these.
glitch. I mean,
Yeah. There's a specific thing you have to do. I think most of the time it's a back throw,
Yeah.
or something like that. It's a backward throw, and
No, it's not
then
even the back throw because it's gonna be a jump throw too.
Yeah.
Remember there's a video of the
that's
infiltration
right.
pose.
Yeah.
It was El Forte doing it to Ryu, and there was an air throw, and then all I do is do a jump and attack, and then Ryu, no matter where Ryu guarded, he still gets hit with the hit, unless you guard when the frame of the attack hits him. So it gets
Yeah.
really strict to guard it. So for like a regular professional player, it's not too bad,
Yeah.
but it sets up more strategies. But for a person that has no clue on what the unblockables, he probably will get a little ticked off. But so, again, Street Fighter 4 is marketed towards casual players. It's not marketed towards the hardcore fan base. Because Street Fighter 3 was marketed, I think, to a hardcore fan base.
Definitely.
Because the pairing system was pretty strict on that. Because you have to push forward. That was the risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You either had to throw, or you got it right, or you were completely wrong.
4, you had focus, which is you take one hit, which is...
And then you can dash back.
And you can dash back and save
Yeah.
options. So you're safe that one. You don't have to risk too much with it, unless it's like a shattering move. That's
Or you
about it.
risk
Armor break.
you kind of wager a chunk of your life.
It's a chunk of your life, but it's more
more
playable compared to like, I don't know the timing of pushing forward. Instead of focus, you're like, you have all that time to like charge up, so you can take any hit during that moment. So it wasn't as strict as tapping forward. So I think that's nice.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, my future of Street Fighter will be that it's not going to die down. It's always going to stay in the same level, just because they keep announcing new stuff for it. They're never going to let Street Fighter just die down. I think I've known. It's never going to be like Third Strike, where they're just going to not talk about it ever again. Because they're going to release, like you said, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, which is a patch for it. Supposedly be a brand new system.
Yeah.
So that's a brand new game basically. So Street Fighter with that. On top of that, they're gonna release the Tekken Cross Street Fighter, which is the Tekken side of the crossover.
Oh god.
And that will probably, even though people won't play Street Fighter, people who play Street Fighter, they probably won't play Tekken. They'll still hype it up because it's Street Fighter, and it's another form. Like remember SNK vs. Capcom, even though it was kind of hyped, it was a crap game. So.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah. There was nothing compared to CVS2. CVS2 was like probably the pinnacle of that crossover fighting game.
It might have been the best.
The best compared
The
to
best
even like just
crossover, I
X-Men vs. Street Fighter. CVS2 surpasses all the crossover fighting games. So if you guys have any comments or what you think Street Fighter in general is, or what your favorite Street Fighter is, or what do you think of Street Fighter will be in the future, leave a comment below. We didn't get to talk about the old crappy Street Fighters like
Rainbow Edition?
Rainbow Edition, Street Fighter movie.
Wait, the movie
The
game
EX series.
The EX series, I don't want to talk about those.
The movie game that was the first iteration was so bad that Capcom Japan had to take it, and then if they brought it back out again, and it played like Super Turbo.
It was Super Turbo. It was Super Turbo.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
All right, so we don't want to talk about that. Travis,
Yeah.
That one was. I'm pretty sure Capcom doesn't really want to talk about it.
was
Even when they
hilarious.
fixed it, you're like, I don't want to talk about it.
It went straight to arcade. It went straight to Sega Saturn.
Pretty much.
So, I also like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. No, wait. Follow us on Twitter, yeah. That's how much I don't use Twitter still. Follow us on Twitter and subscribe to us on YouTube. So, yes, it was a long episode, but hope you guys enjoyed it. So, it's me, Jason Freakmaster Higa, with Marco, Plumber, and Mike. And we'll talk again soon.
Skullomania.